He taken it.
All right.
Wasn't sure.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Please hold your comments until the select board chairman opens the agenda items for public comment. When addressing the board, state your full name both in person and on Zoom. It is suggested that you enter your full name as your ID on Zoom. Minutes. I will take a motion to approve the minutes from November 20, 2023.
Move them.
Second.
All in favor?
One abstention, please.
And a motion to approve the minutes of December 4th, 2023.
Move them.
Second.
All in favor? Very good.
That more.
Yep.
Yes.
Appointments, recognitions, and resignations. Consider appointment of Judy Gilks Benson to the Comprehensive Planning Committee.
Now move appointment with thanks.
Second.
Second.
All in favor? Consider appointment of Tracy Loftus Keller to the Comprehensive Planning Committee as Planning Board Liaison.
Move appointment with thanks.
Second.
All in favor? Consider appointment of Gail Marshall to the Luso Committee.
Move appointment.
Second.
All in favor? Consent agenda, letter from Timothy Billings, short-term rentals. Healthy Acadia Mount Desert Island Hospital Community Health Needs Assessment.
Move acceptance of the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Good. Anybody want to pull anything out? Discussion? No? All in favor? Any select boards reports? Unfinished business. Presentation from A Climate to Thrive reporting the results of the solar pre-development work conducted on behalf of the town of Mount Desert, funded through the Community Resilience Partnership. The presentation will include an analysis of Mount Desert's current municipal electricity use, a prioritized list of potential municipal solar sites, a solar economic analysis for top sites, and recommended next steps.
So I'm gonna screen share if that's.
You should do this.
Well, thank you all for having me here tonight. I'm excited to go through this with you. Just as a refresher, I'm Beth Wolfolk. I work for Climate to Thrive, and we've been contracted to do some pre-development analysis for solar on behalf of the town of Mount Desert, and that is being funded through the CRP. So tonight I'm going to go through kind of a refresher around the background and goals of this work, how it's been funded, and who A Climate to Thrive is. And then we'll be going into the solar landscape in Maine. Why pursue this right now? What are the current economics looking like? Then dive into some of the actual site and economic analysis that we've been looking at, and go through some of our recommendations and next steps. So just as a little bit of background, A Climate to Thrive is a nonprofit organization that was developed by the community on MGI about 8 years ago, and we're working towards energy independence. And so we've been working with the community at all levels on with the businesses, with individual community members, with municipalities, and so we're working on our clean energy transition. And the reason we are working with the town of Mount Desert is because town-owned solar was prioritized was identified as a priority first step in the Mount Desert Climate Action Plan. And so we know that the town can meaningfully reduce municipal emissions by shifting to renewable energy, and that locally and responsibly sited solar energy that's owned by the town will not only reduce emissions, but the ownership of this generation will also save the town a significant amount of money over time. So as I said, the Mount Desert Climate Action Plan identified the following actions as far as priority next steps, which is to identify and prioritize the near-term solar sites, conduct a feasibility analysis for these solar arrays, and develop an RFP to be released in late FY '23 or early 2024. And we're able to do this work because of the funding through the Community Resilience Partnership. So a little bit of background about the solar landscape right now. In the last year, there have been some big economic shifts. Prior to the Inflation Reduction Act, the town was not eligible to receive 30% tax credit for the array. So if the town wanted to buy a solar array, they wouldn't get what is essentially a 30% rebate for that arrays. And now that's opened up because of policy from the Inflation Reduction Act. So that completely changes the solar economics for the town, which is really exciting. And then there's also the state program, which is net energy billing. And while that might shift in the future, any projects that are developed right now are grandfathered in for at least 20 years of the program. So right now, the incentives in Maine are better than they ever have been and probably ever will be. So again, the economics are looking really attractive. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Net energy billing is what allows us, it's the program that allows customers to offset their electricity bills by using the output from small renewable generators. So the generation facility could be located on the on-site where the energy is used or on another property. So if you build a larger array in one site, the energy that's produced in that site, the credits for that energy can be allocated to different sites across the town, which is great. And right now, the town would be using 2 different rates depending on where the arrays are located and where they want to allocate credits. So for the small commercial generators, it would be, the town could be credited at 25 cents per kilowatt hour, which is really high. And then medium commercial accounts would be credited at 24 cents. So I know that was a lot of numbers I'm throwing at you, but it's so going back into the work that Climate to Thrive has done so far, the pre-development work, we started by identifying the energy need. We kind of needed a baseline for how much solar do we need to get to 100%. And then we met with representatives from the town to receive the list of sites that you all were interested in potentially developing. From there, we performed several preliminary site walks with various contractors and their engineers to get their take on the site. And then we received their preliminary designs and we're from there able to kind of prioritize the sites. And now we're at the point where we have a good idea of what our next steps could be with these projects, but want to receive feedback from the community about which sites they want to see move forward, which projects that you all prioritize. After all, they're your projects. And then I also wanted to acknowledge that the town already has an existing solar array on the garage. So on the town garage. It's a 57 kilowatt array that became operational in June of 2018. And the town is participating in a power purchase agreement with Revision Energy. And so the town does not own this array. It's just on the town garage, and you're currently paying about 16 cents per kilowatt hour. And so the electricity generated from this array covers the town garage and a majority of the town offices electrical use, which is great. And the lifetime production has actually been really good. In a few years, it's actually been over projections. And so it's kind of right on par where it should be, which is great. And then the one downside with it is that Revision sells the renewable energy certificates, that the array produces. Basically, for every megawatt hour of electricity the array generates, that you can monetize that, and in order to, some developers, in order to keep it cheap, reduce the price that the town would have to pay for the electricity. Sometimes they'll sell those, and so legally the town cannot claim the renewable energy benefits of this array, the clean energy benefits of this array. So that's another reason it's important to look at ownership, because if the town were in charge, they could, you all could decide whether or not you want to sell the RECs or retire them. So again, going into the energy needs of Mount Desert, I analyzed some of the bills, or all of the bills from 2022, so that I could get a baseline understanding of what the how much energy the town uses. And so I found that there's about 250,000 kilowatt hours per year for small commercial accounts, just a little bit under that. And then roughly 1,200,000 give or take for medium commercial municipal accounts. And the medium commercial, those are like the wastewater treatment plants. They're really heavy users of electricity. I also took a look at how much the current solar is covering, and that would be like the small purple sliver right there in that pie chart. So in order to generate enough electricity to cover 100% of the municipality's electricity needs, the town of Mount Desert would need roughly 1,235 kilowatts of installed solar, or 1.2 megawatts. So, in order to do that, I heard a lot of feedback very early on that you all were not interested in cutting down trees. You don't want to take just one big site and put up a large freestanding array, and you want to be really conscious of the habitat and the environmental impacts of these projects. And so we knew very early on that we were going to be looking at distributed energy, distributed solar. So smaller projects broken up into across the island. And so we took a look at 8 different sites, and from there we're able to prioritize which sites we're going to recommend the town moving forward with, and maybe a few that the town should wait on pursuing. When we were looking at the sites, we were considering the grid infrastructure right now. Interconnection, basically the ability for the project to plug in with the greater grid, is kind of one of the most limiting factors, and one of the most, the thing that impacts the economics of the project the most by far. We were also looking at the potential habitat impacts, the visual impacts, how much it will cost to develop at this site, if any additional structural engineering was involved, and what the site access could be. So this is an order of easiest to implement to most difficult, probably want to pass on. And so we'll start with the Soamesville Fire Station. So this project would be directly tied into the building itself, and to the electrical infrastructure that the building has. It's also on the area of the island with the highest hosting capacity. So it's where the utility is most likely to not add costs in order to interconnect. It would be a 48.5 kilowatt rooftop array, and would roughly save about 40 tons of CO2 over its lifetime. So quite a significant impact, which is the equivalent of about 1,800 trees being planted. And so those types of benefits that I just listed, like that's what the town can legally claim if you choose to retire the RECs, versus the revision array, which you cannot. With this project, again, interconnection really drives the cost of these projects, but the range that we would be looking at is between 140 and 170,000 before the 30% investment tax credit. That's the ITC. And so it's a direct paid tax credit for non-taxable entities, and what we would be looking at there would just be 30% of whatever the end cost is, and that includes interconnection. And then, based on, I ran some scenarios based on, what the possible bond payments could be, depending on how expensive or not the project is, and I did it with a 3.5 annual interest rate and a 2% annual increase, a projected increase in electricity prices. And with that, I found that over 20 years, the project would save between roughly $140,000 to $170,000, which is great. So that's savings after the bond has been paid off. Then we're looking at the Northeast Harbor wastewater treatment plant. This project would be small, but directly tied into the treatment plant's electrical infrastructure as well. And this is the largest user of electricity for the town. And so having something on site there would be great. And even though the grid in Northeast Harbor, I'm sure you all know, you've been seeing challenges with it. Because there's very robust electrical infrastructure at wastewater treatment plants, because they need to bring in so much electricity, it's a lot more likely to be interconnected with a very low interconnection cost. It's also fairly small. So again, the utility will be more likely to interconnect that. So it would be roughly 30 kilowatts for the rooftop array, save almost 23 tons of CO2 emissions, and be the equivalent of about 1,000 trees being planted. And then the economics, this is the cheapest or most affordable project of the 8 sites. It would probably cost between $87,000 and $105,000. You would be getting a direct pay tax credit of between $26,000 and $31,000, and the project could save about between $85,000 and roughly $5,000 over 20 years. And so again, for all of these, so I don't repeat myself, it's all calculated using a 3.5% bond interest rate over 20 years with a 2% annual increase.
Excuse me, the figures you're giving us, I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand, the 87 to 105, that's before the 30% reduction, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, thank you.
And then we also have the Otter Creek pumping station. So this is the first of the freestanding arrays. What's great about this site is that it's already clear, it's fenced in, and it's in a location on the grid that has good electrical infrastructure. Bar Harbor has the newest infrastructure, and this is right near there. And again, it's a pumping station, so it has good, robust electrical infrastructure. So we see this moving forward more easily than some others that I'll talk about later tonight. It'd be a 77 kilowatt ground mount array, save almost 70 tons of CO2 emissions over its lifetime, and be the equivalent of roughly 3,000 trees. We foresee the project costs being between $250,000 to $308,000 before the tax credit. The direct pay municipal tax credit would be between $75,000 and $123,000. Something to note about this site is that it might be a brownfield. The DEP would be the ones to determine that. And if it does qualify as a brownfield, then this project would qualify for an extra 10% bonus tax credit. So that'd be 40% of the project just paid back directly from the town to the town. And the projected net savings is between $176,000 to up to $270,000. A lot depends on the cost of interconnection, and again, whether or not this qualifies as a brownfield. Either way, the savings looks good.
Can I ask one?
Yeah.
Can I? So when you're talking about a brownfield, is this because it had a previous use?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on what the DEP comes back with, the soil tests and.
projected net savings tended to be about the same as the total projected cost in the first three.
Mhm.
And then this one is a little bit lower. Is that because it's ground mount versus roof mount? Is it more expensive for the ground mounted solar?
Yeah, the larger the solar array is, the higher interconnection costs, we project. Again, it's very difficult to tell before you actually have the interconnection studies, and I'll talk about that, process later tonight. But that's why the costs are a little bit higher for this. The smaller projects, we're anticipating far less, costs allocated, to that. So that's what's going on there. Good question. So the benefits of the top three sites, as I said, they're the easiest to implement. They have the lowest potential interconnection cost. They have virtually no impact on the habitat, and they have the lowest upfront, investment and the highest ROI. So the top three sites would, be about 155.5 kW of solar, kilowatts of solar, potentially save the town between roughly 400,000 to $545,000 over 20 years. Avoid about 130 tons of CO2 emissions, and be the equivalent of almost 6,000 trees being planted. Then we're getting into the we need more feedback and time to work with these sites before recommending whether or not to move forward with them. So the Seal Harbor wastewater treatment plant / parking lot, what we discussed with the engineers here is kind of a hybrid where the upper lot would be a parking canopy, because we know that the town is looking to put electrical infrastructure there, parking there for EVs, and that this could help reduce the cost of having to for both infrastructure build outs, I guess, if that makes sense. So if you're putting the infrastructure in to put the EV charging stations in, it just reduces the cost, the electrical infrastructure cost for the actual array itself. So it could pair well, and we like parking canopies because it's a good dual use of space, where it would potentially be overlooked. Then the lower lot, there's space there for ground mounts. That's roughly where the engineer said that they would put them. We would work with the town to figure out what whether or not that last row down the bottom, needs to be removed or not, so that there would be space for turnaround. But right now, roughly with the lot in the lower lot, you would have 152 kilowatts worth of canopy arrays, canopy and ground mounted arrays, and save roughly 120 tons of CO2 emissions, which is the equivalent of about 5,500 trees planted. And the economics of this project look like this. So the total project cost would be probably between 608,000 to 684,000. Like I said, a lot depends on interconnection costs. Seal Harbor has some very old electrical infrastructure. And so I anticipate that the potential interconnection costs in this area would be higher. That being said, the town's existing electrical infrastructure for the wastewater treatment plant makes it potentially better, makes it potentially easier to interconnect because there's so much energy usage at that site at this time. The direct pay municipal tax credit could be anywhere between $182,000 to $273,000. This is another site that could qualify as a brownfield, and there would be an additional, which would come with an additional 10% municipal tax credit. So the projected lifetime savings would be anywhere between $266,000 to almost $350,000 over the 20-year lifetime. Then, again, we were getting creative because we don't want to impact habitat or deforest So while we were looking at the sites, we also looked at the town parking lot. And this would be the largest project on the list, and it could be located right outside from where we are right now, and use the parking lot that already exists. While it's large, the surrounding buildings have a fairly significant load associated with their use. And that could potentially lead to some lower interconnection costs. This would be a 379 kilowatt parking canopy array. And it would save almost 300 tons of CO2 emissions over its lifetime and be the equivalent of about 13,400 trees planted. Yes,
How much of that pie is left?
I have that at the end of the sites. And don't worry, the first 5 sites take the longest to talk about, and then we'll go through the other ones.
Are you talking about in the parking lot, this being ground?
This would be a parking canopy,
But
so.
it's just, we still have parking there.
Yeah, there would be a 14
Okay.
foot clearance underneath. I have another slide that I talk a little bit more about the parking canopies. So the total project cost, this would be probably one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive one on the list. The total project cost would be anywhere between $1.5 million to almost $1.9 million for the tax credit. The direct pay municipal tax credit would be anywhere between about $450,000 to $568,000. And the lifetime savings would be anywhere between $457,000 to $870,000. Another note about the, you'll notice a variation in the projected 20-year net savings. Parking canopies are a lot more expensive than just ground mount arrays or rooftop arrays. And so the additional infrastructure cost is why the net savings is we're projecting lower on that. But it's a great use of space, which I talked about here. So between the ground mounts and the lower gravel area at Seal Harbor wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at 531 kilowatts of solar, which could allow the town to have anywhere between $720,000 to $1.2 million in electricity savings over 20 years. The CO2 emissions avoided would be just over 400 metric tons, which is great. And then which would be the equivalent of almost 19,000 trees planted. Like I said, the parking canopies would be a valuable use of space that would have traditionally been overlooked. It could pair well with EV infrastructure, and it has no impact on habitat. Some of the cons with it, it is more expensive per kilowatt, as I mentioned. And since these would be larger projects, they're likely to have higher interconnection costs associated with them. All of the parking canopies that we're looking at would have a 14-foot clearance underneath, so they would be easily plowed. They're designed to work in the Northeast, so snow load and wind. They've considered all of that in their designs. So now we're getting into really want a lot of feedback from the town about whether or not to pursue this site. The town garage, we're kind of pessimistic about the site for a couple of reasons. We were looking kind of out back behind the garage, around the kind of in between the road and just kind of like the back area. And so we think that the interconnection cost for the site could potentially be the highest. Because there's already an existing array, it complicates the interconnection process, and the amount of renewable energy allowed on a single line is regulated by the utility. And so we think the interconnection process in this spot could be expensive. and far more complicated. You would also have to cut down a lot of trees in this area, and it would impact, view sheds. However, this is as it's designed, it's a 337 kilowatt array. When I was talking to the engineers, they basically said they can make it for the amount of electricity that the town needs, that the other projects don't cover. They can build it out or shrink it based on how we size the other projects. So for this model, it's 337 kilowatts that can grow or shrink. So the project cost would be between almost $1 million and $1.2 million roughly, and save between about 218 tons of CO2 emissions, which would be the equivalent of almost 10,000 or just over 10,000 trees planted. Moving right along to Mount Desert Elementary School. This project, the project size has higher associated interconnection costs, but at the root of it, this project isn't really feasible because the architects that were taking a look at the school said that the current structure could not support the additional rooftop array. And that's not because of the weight of the panels, it's because of the wind and how that could impact the roof. So at this point, it's not really a feasible project, which is disappointing because you can fit quite a lot of solar up there. And so if the town garage is not something that the town wants to pursue, it might be worth circling back to this one to take a look at how much it could cost to put the structural supports in place to support that. If the town is interested, it might be worth investigating. But at this point, without an unknown amount of investment in the structural support, it's just not feasible. We also took a look at the Soamesville wastewater treatment plant, and we don't recommend moving the site forward. The rooftop arrays there. There's no space for rooftop arrays, and all of the surrounding land is basically wetland. And so we're just not recommending any development there. You were talking about the pie, John, and so this is the pie. So that purple, that's the existing solar. Then we're looking at the Soamesville Fire Station, Otter Creek Pumping Station, the Northeast Harbor Wastewater Treatment Plant. That's the green chunk right there. Those are the small projects, really easy to implement, pretty low upfront investment, easy to move forward. Then we have the Seal Harbor treatment plant with that kind of upper parking canopy and lower freestanding. And then the town office parking canopy, potential parking canopy here with 31%. And then, like I said, the town garage is a pretty hefty chunk at 39%, which is pretty much everything left over. Again, we could investigate looking at the equity of the school a little bit further. But I put the town garage in here as kind of that stand-in. Just wanted to also compare kind of the economics of the site, so you can see it in a different way, but it's all the same information, but it adds up to quite a substantial amount of savings for the town. So our recommendations is to fund phase 1 of development for the top 3 sites, the very easy ones to implement, kind of the low hanging fruit that should move forward regardless of how the others play out. Next, we would recommend working with Greg Johnson Associates to further explore the viability of the solar parking canopies in the town parking lot and the Seal Harbor parking lot sites. Brian told me that they're potentially looking at doing a redesign of the town parking lot. And so just working with them on that and getting more information about, the feasibility of that and the costs of that, with that transition. And then, getting more feedback from the town about, whether or not you all want to move forward with the garage site, continue pursuing that, circle back to the school. Those are our recommendations. And, just real quick, how the timeline of this project, how we see it playing out. We are right here. And so, we see the next steps as, drafting a warrant article to fund phase one, develop and administer the RFP in, the first quarter of next year, so we can get, some contractors, signed on, and further and engineering and designs, have the town vote to fund this project. And then, sign contracts for phase one. And phase one, is really finalizing those project designs, going through the interconnection application and studies. That's really where we're gonna determine, that'll be the final say on, the viabilities of the viability of some of these projects. There are some sites where the, utility may just say no. But we won't know that until we actually apply with, and we can't do that without a contractor to send in the single phase diagrams and contracting that engineering work. We would also be obtaining the state and local permitting and finalizing the interconnection agreements, and then from there secure funding for phase two, which would be the actual construction of the arrays. So we're recommending this pathway in order to mitigate risks to the town. That way you're not taking out a bond to fund these projects where some of them might not go forward. And so this is our recommended phase one development budget for the interconnection applications, and then the studies and associated deposits. We'd be looking at $20,000 for the application, the interconnection study and deposit $150,000, engineering and additional studies, 30,000. Then having that third-party engineer review, that's really important. Project management, whether that comes from the town or an outside contractor, the contingency budget, for a total of $278,000. And that's the presentation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And this plan, that what you're hoping to bring to town meeting this in 2024 would just be planning for those first three projects, is that correct?
It'd be the first three projects and some work on on looking at the feasibility of the town parking lots as well.
Mhm. This may be a dumb question, but how long do they last?
That's a great question. So they're guaranteed for at least 20 years. And then from there, solar is still in a pretty young phase. But they're guessing is the wrong term. They're estimating that they're gonna last about 30 years. Yeah.
Is it designing them as plug and play, sort of, you just take a panel out and then plug a new one in, or is it a big fiasco to?
Yeah, the utility doesn't like plug and play.
Yeah.
And that's where the interconnection applications come in. So that's where you get, those single line diagrams, like stamped by an electrical engineer. And then the utility reviews that and reviews what the existing electrical infrastructure is. They also have data that we just simply don't have access to. The utility, it does not make that public for anyone. And so they'll go through their engineering studies and come back with, either the green light, a yellow light, which is you can move forward, but it'll cost you this much, or the red light, this just can't move forward.
Yeah, I noticed in your budget sheet, projection, you included a 20% contingency.
Mhm.
Is that pretty much standard? And if it is, where would you anticipate there may be cost overruns in your budget that you would need to rely on that contingency?
The interconnection process, we have found that the utility process is unpredictable. So for the Swimmable array, we're guessing that
Yeah.
that might take $5,000 to get the studies back and and for them to do their work. Sometimes they cost $26,000, like you don't know until you apply, and so we're putting that extra contingency there to protect the town.
Moving target.
Yes, they've really created a moving target, yeah.
Thank you.
Bill, go ahead.
Beth, I want to thank you for all your work so far on this, but one of the things I think the voters would really want to hear is, what do you think the payback period would be for these first three projects that we're moving forward? I mean, is it 12 years, is it 18 years? What is your projection?
That's a really good question, Phil. You know, I modeled it so, it was paying down the bond payment over 20 years and looking at the net savings from there. But if you're looking at just the cash price of it, you're looking at probably between 5 and 6 years if these projects paying for themselves.
To me, I think that's what the voters would want to hear.
But that's including the full payment for the bond or just the amount?
And that's for a cash payment. So, the way I modeled it was, again, like making those payments over the 20-year period. And so, I mean, it shows positive net flow, or positive savings
Mhm.
in year one, because
Right.
yeah, the savings, the electrical savings, outweigh the, bond
Payment.
payment, yeah.
And I get one more point to the voters that we want to point out, that until just recently is this year, that 30% tax credit was only available to homeowners and businesses. Municipalities could not get this. And so this is all through, the Inflation Reduction Act that we were able to get this 30% back directly on the project, which is, substantial. And that's almost what, if you looked at the three projects, that about a third back, about 30%.
And potentially 40 of that.
Is that
So if you
30?
get the brownfield, we're up to, a third of the project getting back in cash payments to the town that, our finance people are, work out how we want to do it.
Is that 30% a sure thing? I mean, depending on who gets elected next?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
It's, yes, definitely until 2025, but, almost certainly until 2030. So, in 2025, they're changing the name of it, and so I don't project that, actually influencing like the percentage from how I read the Inflation Reduction Act and from all the information I've had from the contractors and, from the politicians. It looks like it's secure until 2030.
And again, as someone that knows too much, I want to point out one more thing that's really important. The town would own this array. This is not,
Right.
we're not contracting to anyone. It's not a power purchase agreement. We're not buying into it. We own it. And that's something that, again, I think the voters would want to hear.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hedging, it's certainly, it's locked in until 2030. We've been working with the Department of Energy on several different projects, and like the way they've been financially mapping it out, it's there, so.
We'd like to think. What, this is something I've always wondered. What happens when one of the panels goes bad or it wears out or whatever? What do you do with them?
That's a really good question. Well, because the solar industry is really ramping up nationwide, there's a lot more recycling programs for them now, thankfully. You'll also have an O&M contract, an operations and maintenance contract with the contractors that we end up hiring. And I want to work with the town on developing the RFP to make sure that those types of specifications are in there for what happens to the material once if it breaks or if it needs to be retired. We can have all that in the RFP.
Are they are recycled
Mhm.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not just going into
A landfill,
a
no.
landfill, something, okay, thank you. Good.
No, that's a really, it's a
Question.
common question. It's a good one.
Great, given us a lot to think about. Is there a place we can read through that?
Yeah, I'll send a report into the town that,
Great.
that,
That would be
That'd be
great.
really helpful.
Yeah, because it went by pretty fast. I mean,
Yeah.
I took notes, so I'd pay attention, but, you
yeah.
know.
Great.
Almost got right as crab.
I know. Well, it helps me focus, but yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
All
Yeah.
right, thank you.
Great
Thank you very
presentation.
much.
All right. Discussion of Boston Cane Award, Edith Manning.
Okay, so, I put, ads in the paper, posted notices throughout town and on the website, and we received no applications. So I went through and did what I usually do, run through my, voter list to see who would be eligible. And Edith Mann is the oldest resident in town, and she has been in town for, per the policy, the required amount of time. I did note that you had proposed a couple of names at another meeting. I did not find those specific names, but I did find a Gertrude Walton. Is that possibly someone you were thinking of? Any rate, she's deceased, so she would not qualify.
One of those people,
Scott Renault.
yeah,
was one name.
one of the other ones was, not eligible because, was a relative of a person, but was not a resident of the community, so that
Yeah.
was off the.
And there was, Eleanor Renault, and she also is deceased.
No,
So,
you think you're Dorothy.
no, I did not find Dorothy, but I did find an Eleanor.
Dot lives, at Cortland, but according to the policy, she spent her whole life in Northeast Harbor, so she's eligible. She turned 100, when was it, last June? We sent her flowers.
Yeah.
I think it was in June.
It's in the spring sometime.
But she resides now in Cortland and elsewhere.
But that doesn't disqualify
doesn't.
her.
Well,
She is there though.
Yeah, sorry.
if
It's a
she's
different
there,
thing.
like, not, like, she hasn't permanently moved, like, if she's there because she's in care or whatever, like a facility, then I think she still qualifies, but if they've they've moved their primary residence.
I think even so, according to I read through the policy pretty carefully to see if she'd be, but I don't know if she's older than the one you found.
Well, Edith, I think, is 98. And so I don't have any information on,
I can get you
Sure.
information on that.
okay, nobody submitted anything.
No, we talked about a meeting, you weren't here,
Yeah.
but yeah, we can talk. Cause I think she would be
Yeah.
the older,
Nothing was submitted. We were just talking about.
we're just
Okay.
talking.
Okay, well, I was just
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
Her family
you
didn't submit
guys or the
anything,
family,
right?
Nobody submitted an application,
okay,
so we can,
I can do that, so we
Talk about
can
that.
talk about it, yeah.
okay.
But thank you for the work. That's,
Yeah, it's good.
Okay, thank you.
so will this come back
Yeah,
next
it'll-
meeting?
Yeah, I guess it'll have to come back after Martha and I talk. And
Okay.
if I can get a hold of her and.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, report to select board from the short-term rental task force, and I would ask everyone to withhold comments. If you need to ask a question to clarify something, that's fine, but the public discussion on this isn't gonna take place until at least our next meeting,
Probably the end of January.
end of
actually,
January.
yeah. Okay, I'm sorry Jeff isn't able to be here. He had a family emergency, so it's up to me to, give you a brief update and overview on the work we've done so far with the short-term rental, task force. We plan to have a draft ordinance to present to the Board of Selectmen in January for discussion. And then we're hoping for the first meeting in January, and then the second meeting have public comment. That wouldn't be the official hearing, it would just be a chance for people to hash things out. But I wanted to just give you a sort of a brief, this is where we're headed and see what you think. We tried to keep it really simple and to address the concerns that arose last year when we tried something similar. So what we've done, we've tried to design something that recognizes the long tradition in our town of people renting their houses out so they can go to camp, so they can pay their property taxes. And ensure that the residents of Mount Desert can continue to host weekly rentals in their homes. We're differentiating in the policy that we're going to propose between people who are renting out all or part of their primary residence. We're calling them short-term rentals. They'd still need a license, but there would be fewer restrictions for those people, mostly safety concerns. And then the other class would be those that are renting a second home or investment property, and those we're calling vacation rentals. We wanted to make sure two things were in place before we put this before the voters. The first was that the administration of the program would not burden town employees. And Derlin has outlined, I believe it's in tonight's packet, a plan so that it's not all gonna fall on Kim or Claire, but that it will be taken care of. We also wanted the program to pay for itself. And in Derlin's comments, you can see that we've addressed that. They would be paid for by licensing fees set by the select board. And we will have suggestions for those fees. As I said, our goal is to have an open discussion in January and something on the ballot for the town meeting. If this passes, we would start accepting applications in 2024, but it wouldn't go into effect officially until 2025. So we have some shakedown time for people to get organized. So that's it in a nutshell. And I didn't know if you guys had any questions or.
Is this an annual registration fee?
Yes, it would be annual.
I have one comment
Yeah,
that might be helpful for your
sure.
committee, task force, or whatever to consider. For 2 years now, since this has been under discussion, I have been asking for and waiting to hear the problem with the rentals as they exist today. In other words, a problem statement that this ordinance is designed to address.
Mhm.
Without that problem statement, we're creating a solution to a problem that does not exist because the
Mhm.
problem has not been identified. And the voters are going to want to know clearly what problem is being repaired by passing yet another ordinance.
Mhm.
Because we seem to, in our best efforts to slim down the Luso, we continue to create more and more ordinances, so. Somebody needs to focus on a problem statement, because without one, as I said, we're creating a solution to something that doesn't exist. And the perception is that is government overreach,
Mhm.
so, for what that's worth.
I understand your concern and, I guess from my perspective, I feel that our town, along with most of the towns on the coast of Maine, have a real problem with affordable housing for people who want to live and work in our communities. And there are many reasons for this, that this problem has come to us. And I believe that one of the problems, and one that we can do something about, is the proliferation of short-term rentals. According to the figures that we've seen, I think it's 20% of the housing stock in our town is being rented out on a short-term basis, used as basically as hotels. And that impacts the number of year-round rentals or year-round homes that we have available for people to come and live here. So that is how I see the problem. I think that it's something that's going to, unless we put some kind of restraint on it and license it and take precautions with what houses are being rented and where, it's just gonna grow and grow and grow. And we're gonna be like a community that I visited in Arkansas, Eureka Springs, several times. The whole town is weekly rentals. The whole town is weekly rentals. You walk through there and it's not a community anymore. And I would hate to have that happen to our town.
And is it the idea that this is actually gonna make a difference? Like, I get what you're saying and I agree, but if I've got, you know, a rental that I rent weekly for income, I'm gonna pay the $275 and rent it still for income. I'm not gonna, you know,
Right.
so is, like Rick's kind of saying, is your solution going to actually make a difference?
If it's your primary residence, you can do what you want. And you can continue to do what you want. You're the homeowner. You should be able to. However, you know, as long as
But
you-
because I have family that I've inherited an extra home
right,
that I can't afford to keep unless I rent, then I'm kind of being penalized for that.
it's not being outlawed. What we're saying, what we will propose, we hope to propose in this ordinance is a cap on the number of those, what we're calling vacation
So
rentals.
at the end of the day, it is trying to cap those numbers.
Yes. But it will not eliminate existing properties that are being used in that fashion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's about it.
Anybody else have a question? Clarification? No? All right.
John, I have a question, but I don't know if this is the time to ask it or not, but my question is this, with this ordinance, are you going to differentiate between seasonal homes that can only be used in the summertime? Are you gonna take that number into consideration, or are you just saying the number is? Because we have seasonal homes in this community, and we have year-round homes in this community. Are you gonna take those? Are you gonna cap the seasonal homes as well?
At this point, they're not distinguished. There are two classes.
Okay, but do you understand my question?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right, new business. Backroads Travel, Kyle Pacquioni, public space special event application, Summersby Park. Use of Summersby Park for picnic, snack, and staging area for 5 to 20 bikes with 2 15-passenger vans and 2 trailers, various dates starting June 3rd, 2024 through October 7th, 2024.
That's me. Can you guys hear me okay? Or is it a little bit loud?
No, that's fine.
It's fine? Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me, but I'll keep this short because I know I'm not the main priority here. TLDR, our goal is to use Saminsky Park as the start of a bike ride. We've been running bike trips in Acadia for about 15 years, and this will be my first year managing the itinerary for our biking trip. As of right now, we start from a lobster pound in Northeast Harbor. And the two main reasons that we want to change to Saminsky Park are, one, it's going to eliminate a lot of friction between our bikers and other visitors to the park. Because as of right now, they have to cross Highway 3 in order to enter Parkman Mountain. That's where our bike ride goes. And starting from Saminsky would eliminate that problem entirely. So it'll just be a win-win for everyone who's visiting the park and significantly safer. Second, we do have a new vendor this year. So if we do not start from Saminsky, we'll be looking for somewhere else. But our new vendor is in Bar Harbor, so we'll be driving to a different location. And our new vendor is willing to take our leftovers from our picnic, so it reduces food waste a lot. And that's a big priority for us at Backroads. That's a win-win for us as well. And it also is going to minimize our interference with local businesses in terms of how much time our guests are in one location. So this would split our guests between having a picnic at a restaurant. So we're not going to be picnicking in Saminsky Park. There will be no big picnic spread, no big accumulation of garbage, none of that. Pretty much just a starting point for bike rides, as opposed to taking 2+ hours of business's time and having the entire meal, doing all of our safety talks and staging all the bikes, this would split it up, just reducing our impact in the area overall.
I appreciate your request. However, I regret to say I'm against it. The Summonsby Park is a quiet public park. People like to picnic, swimming and play volleyball. There's limited parking there. I don't think it should be used as a commercial, part of a commercial venture.
Yeah, I agree with Martha on that one. We're trying to keep our, getting swamped by commerce here. And we've had these requests in the past, and we've turned them down for the same reason.
Okay. Do you guys have a recommended location that is near Parkman Mountain that you think would be good for us?
I mean, if you're just parking and getting ready to go for a bike ride and going over safety, why wouldn't you use the parking lot at Parkman Mountain and leave from there?
We're not allowed to park.
No, it's just
Oh, you're leaving the vans there.
So the way it works is we park and we stage the bikes and everyone gets fitted to their bike and then they leave from the parking lot. The only place that we could park in Parkman Mountain would be where the bus goes.
Right, got it, sorry.
So where would you park if you left Summonsby Park? Where would you go?
We
If you're not-
would,
if
so
you're not
one,
leaving there,
if we, can you say the question again? If we did not leave
Well-
from Summonsby Park?
well, I'm confused now because in reading the proposal, it seemed that you were going to be parking your van and trailers at Summingsby Park as your jumping off point. Then what happens to the van and the trailers? Do they leave Summingsby Park and go someplace else?
Yes. So one of our vans will go to West Street Hotel in Bar Harbor and one will still go to Parkman Mountain, but not in the parking lot. They would park across the street and brief the guests on what to expect in terms of the carriage rides.
So Summingsby Park would be used simply to stage the bicycles and then you'd be gone.
Correct.
Thank you.
And when you say the first of multiple dates, is it something that would be weekly or?
there's.
Yes. So the first date is on June 3rd.
Sorry,
And
I
our,
see the second page.
yeah, so
Oh.
there will be about 20 departures throughout the year.
Yeah.
I move to approve the request.
Second.
Right, any discussion? All in favor? All against?
Thank you all for your time.
Okay,
I think that was, personally, I think it was from someone that spends a lot of time in Summersby Park, who spends at Parkman Mountain every night and dealing with these vendors over the years. Yes, the backcountry particularly has upped their game and been a little bit more, compassionate to like our needs as a town. We had a lot of problems when they were in the marina, you know, they'd come in and basically take over. And basically the Park Service, again, knowing too much, had the same problems with them where they would set up shop in the parking lot. And, you know, visitors and locals would come and try to park their cars and there's these vans and 18 bikes sprawled across the parking lot. And that's what would happen at Summersby Park. So I commend your decision that, you know, we're taking a place that's still a really special resource that we have that's left. And, you know, I think all the secret places in the world are disappearing thanks to, you know, social media. And we gotta keep the few things that we do have. So good job, folks.
all right, thank you. Authorize Public Works Superintendent Ben Jacobs to solicit competitive bids for a 2025 International Cab and Chassis with a diesel-powered engine for the Highway Division of the Public Works Department.
You'll notice we're doing this well in advance of when we're actually going to replace it, and that's due to just the issue of getting these types of vehicles, and it's better to be a little bit ahead on this.
Okay,
Good, thank
Move
you.
authorization.
Second.
all in favor? Consideration of to release up to $2,000 from the fire station's building reserve account 4040-300-24470 and authorize the fire chief to use such funds for the purpose of purchasing and having installed a base radio antenna at Mount Desert Fire Department Fire Station number 3.
Move authorization.
Second,
All in favor? Consideration of authorizing Fire Chief Mike Bender to purchase a Unimac extractor from Daniels Equipment Company at a cost not to exceed $18,000 in association with the Mount Desert Fire Station number 1 in Northeast Harbor building project.
Move authorization.
Second,
Any discussion?
I just have a question. Does this also maybe keep the life of it a little bit better, taking care of it this well, the equipment,
No, it doesn't extend the life.
okay,
It just primarily cleans the contaminants.
keeping it, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Sorry.
Good question.
Good question.
second moved and seconded.
All in favor? Extract away. Consideration of hosting a rabies clinic for town of Mount Desert residents and their dogs on Saturday morning, January 3rd, in conjunction with town clerk's office to register dogs for calendar year 2024.
This would be the second year that we've done this, and I think for those who participated, it was well received, and as the clerk, we're always, our goal is to get the dogs registered and to keep the community safe. And so I think this is a win-win. We do have a sponsor this year, as we did last year. So it's
How many dogs do you get through there?
Well, last year was the first time and we have 12. And so that's 12 more than we would have had registered. So I'm hoping that this year, because, you know, was out last year, that we'll have more. Maybe we'll have 20 dogs this year.
Okay, so this isn't hundreds of people bringing their.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's a great community
I think so.
offer
too.
and helps people,
Yeah,
and
just-
like
I'm
you
just
said.
asking. I
Yeah,
think we
no,
should
yeah.
be mindful as to what we burden our office staff with.
Yes, and that was the other thing too, is this year we're going to a 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. on a work day. So, you know, we'll stay here an extra hour later from work, and so again, I think that's good. I don't have to bring my staff in on Saturday.
I think that's a great idea.
Good.
And I think having an annual helps, like, get the word out there too,
Right.
so.
And this year, Jennifer did a report for me, and it looked like we had maybe 55 dogs that were due for their rabies. So, you know, I don't expect all 55 dogs to show up, but
I think it's great.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
thank you.
Thank you, Claire.
Thank you, Claire. Consider budgetary carry forwards of unexpended amounts for fiscal year 2023 to the fiscal year 2024, as described in memo from Finance Director Maywire.
Move them.
Second,
All in favor?
Third.
Then review of general government and debt budgets for fiscal year 24-25.
This year, I decided it might make sense to do a couple of things. One is to just kind of write you a brief memo explaining where the differences, the major differences are. And I also thought it might be useful too, is I gave you, if you review the two budgets that you're reviewing tonight, general government and debt, what the net impact is on the budget increase for those two departments. So the overall 3.30, because there's a significant reduction in the debt budget this year. And so I thought what I would do is I would keep this running total for you each review. So next meeting, we'll be reviewing public safety. So when you review public safety, I'll roll that in with general government and debt, so you can see where the cumulative increase is by the time you get to the end of the department budgets. And then after that time, then what I thought I would do is I would, roll in, perhaps the CIP at that point, and you could see what that impacts. So what I'm trying to do is every time you go through, you see where the total runs. Basically, and make it a cumulative effect. So I thought that would be useful to both to you and to the warrant committee. And also I would like to, the two biggest impacts on this year's general government budget would be the recommendation that you put in 60,000 for a planning consultant to work with the comprehensive plan committee, rather than have them just sort of flailing out by themselves, somebody to guide them through and make that. So I recommended that, and then I also recommended in conjunction with what Martha had talked earlier about, if the short-term rental ordinance should be adopted, I recommended this position of deputy code enforcement officer as a standalone by itself. However, if that ordinance does pass, then I rolled in a funding mechanism to do it, to offset the cost. And I'm pretty confident that with what the figures I've seen, I think I've been fairly conservative. I think it would more than pay for itself. However, I'm recommending that position, whether or not the short-term rental ordinance passes or not, for the reasons outlined. We've been 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years without a deputy. And I noticed the stress on that department. I think that department is stressed beyond the point where I'm comfortable with. There's plenty for that position to do, whether they get short-term rentals or not. There's also another problem. Why we're not able to fund it is because there aren't any code enforcement officers. Basically, the thing has disappeared. So unless Kim has discovered the secret of immortality, at some point in time, I'd like to build in a succession plan for her. And I think we're gonna have to train our own. We're gonna have to bring a person in without the license, probably. I'm not guaranteeing, but that's what I'm looking at. And then build them so that they get the license. And then have them not only to assist her and take off. I'd like to remove her from the planning board because I think she's got too much field work to do. I think that is going to be the main thing. I'd like to have them use on the planning board, do some of the septic pump inspection. So I think it's a position that's well worthwhile, well overdue. Then it's up to the town whether they want to either accept the position. If they do they want to fund it through fees, or do they want to fund it through taxation? So there's where your basic increases lie on that.
It's a good
Sterling.
memo.
So, go ahead.
Just a question regarding in your memo, you quoted $112,000. That includes benefits and all that.
Yeah,
For the
absolutely.
position.
Yeah,
Am I correct in that the first year, should that standalone short-term rental ordinance pass, the first year of that $112,000 will be paid by the taxpayers?
I think so. We we haven't got the administration of it up to the point to see how much of the fees we would actually be connected. I thought it would be prudent, because it would be a startup, not to include any fees in that first year. Whatever we get would be a benefit. It would be kind of like pennies from heaven. But I would include, but by the second year, when you're rolling up and getting those in, it should be fully paid.
Well, my point is, it should be, clear to the taxpayers
Yeah.
that this is gonna be a one-time thing.
Right.
It's not going to be rolling over year after year in the budget.
Right, exactly. And that's why I did put in there that I thought that the first year we would have to fund that through taxation, and that after the first year, it should be able to stand alone. So that's a voter decision, what they want to do with that.
But it's high time we had
Yeah.
a deputy.
I'd like to move back up the list here to the comprehensive planning consultant. Is that a done deal?
No,
Okay,
it's
so
just,
are we gonna put that up for bid, or are we just gonna make them?
that's up to you. Yeah, you guys control that. I'm just recommending the position, how you fund it and who funds it. I mean, who gets it, that's totally up to you. Well, I can recruit and then you make a choice. So, yeah. Whatever you want.
Did we have money in the budget for this deputy? We did have money, we.
Yeah,
approved it.
we had for like a part-time
Right.
position, but it was very small.
Yeah.
Wendy. It was mostly so Kim could take a summer vacation.
Okay,
So it was under 10,000.
oh, okay.
Yeah, it was just so, but it's still sitting there, so I thought this might be the opportunity to try to bring it back and actually do something to take some of the stress off a very, very busy department.
Yeah,
So,
And it's just gonna keep growing.
that's right.
It's gonna
Everything's
get
gotten
more.
so complicated now.
Yeah,
anyhow,
great memo though. I appreciate it.
oh, thank you. Appreciate that. I thought it might make sense to give you guys context this time.
Appreciate it.
No problem. So now we can review all the other stuff and ask all the questions. We've got two people here in person, no, one person here in person, which
May is here.
is Amy. And then we've got Anne Marie. And then we've got Seal Harbor Library, Wendy. And I don't know if we have Steve from the Silverville Library or not. Steve Anastasia. He may be out of power out there.
I wouldn't be
Yeah, well,
surprised.
I'll just mention
Said
it
that
to him.
everybody's out, right? Yeah.
So Steve probably couldn't, but we'll catch up with Steve. Those would be the ones that you could done contract.
None of them have,
services.
raised their
No, we've all asked.
rates.
We've all asked the same thing.
So,
It looked pretty good to
Yeah, I
me.
can see. Mostly personnel costs.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, that's one of those things that, you know, it's gonna go up every year as you try to stay more competitive. And it also reflects the very good longevity program that the town voted last year. So I think it's a great investment. Well, I'm prejudiced.
You have a question though about historical preservation. Does this have an endpoint?
Yeah, I'm actually getting pretty close. I think another year or two, and we will have all of the old, like 250-year-old books preserved, rebound, and digitalized. So we're getting pretty close to that. And then from there, it's just ongoing maintenance.
Do we keep the originals too, still? Or they,
Well, they get rebound,
yeah,
so they are the originals.
no, so, okay, yeah,
Yes. New covers, the paper's all treated so
Yeah.
that it is preserved.
because there was a problem with them years ago, I remember that.
This is why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we have such a long history. We
Yeah.
Go right back to the founding of the country as far as being a town, so our documents are as old as any of the federal government.
Right, and I actually found, when I was looking for something for the Historical Society, when the town of Mount Desert became, or I don't know what the word is, proposed or supported that Maine withdraw from Massachusetts, and how it was signed by all our town fathers or whatever, it was really cool. I'm like,
Yeah.
I had goosebumps reading that document, and I'm like, these are real people, and it was sent to one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. It was sent to Massachusetts to that,
Wow.
and I was like, ooh.
Yeah, that was one of the interesting things, we had our bicentennial in 1989. That we actually went to the Great and General Court of Massachusetts for our proclamation as opposed to Augusta, because we were part of Massachusetts at that time, so our proclamation came out of Boston and not Augusta, so it's kind of cool.
I remember that bicentennial, there was an explosion in the harbor.
There was, I don't recall.
They're setting off fireworks.
Oh, that's funny.
It's kind of, people were diving into the water to get away from the barge where they.
Which
Right
oh,
at,
right
in
here.
front of, yeah, it was in
Well,
front
I've
of,
done that.
Clifton, I was down on Clifton Beach, and it was out in the water there, they had a barge, and he'll be embarrassed if I tell this, but I'll tell it anyway. My son, Richard, who's now 40, at the time was a little boy and he was terrified of fireworks. And I said, honey, they're great. You're gonna love them. They're so safe. And then they started, and then explosion, there are these flames shooting up, and he's going, what is it? And I said, no, it's just a fire. And then there are people leaping into the water to escape from the flames.
I was working in the marina that, that came on at 5 and the crew showed up late. And they rushed it all together.
It was very exciting.
You're right.
It was on the little field bunker barge, which, you know, is about 20 feet long and.
Okay,
Anyway, sorry.
it's a great story, though. Okay. Everybody okay with it?
Yeah.
Thank you, Darrell.
I think a 3.3% increase overall is pretty austere, given the climate we now live in.
And some big additional expenses.
Yeah,
Say that in front of Brian.
I know, I can see the dollar signs
No,
rolling on his
actually,
eyes right
I think
now.
you'll be quite surprised when you see Brian's.
He's saving it up.
Throwing it into the CIP.
All right, any other business?
Yes, sir.
No. Treasurer's warrants, what I live for. Approve and sign town invoice AP 2438 in the amount of $415,359.93.
Move approval and signature.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, approve and sign state fees and payroll benefits, AP 2436, AP 2437, and PR 2414 in the amount of $275,684.38.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor?
One abstention, please.
Acknowledgement, school invoices, AP 6, school payroll, PR 12 in the amount of $141,311.77.
Move acknowledgement.
Second.
All in favor? Motion to adjourn,
So
Second.
all in favor?